study of what's called ilm al-rijal, the study of those narrators' histories. Where he was born, she was born, where they traveled, with whom they met, with what year, detailed history of hundreds of thousands of those narrators. It's called ilm al-rijal. This is the science for the study of these men and women who narrated those hadiths. So the study of those chains is called the study of Islam. So if you end up with a chain where this guy says, Abdul Aziz here says, I met Salim, and he actually met him, that tells us that this have happened, and they have exchanged that narration. Sometimes you look carefully here, and you discover that out of one companion, there are two tabi'is who have heard from that person. And out of the two, you have 5 who have heard from him. Okay? But you come to this point at this generation and you discover that they're completely cut off here in the chain of narrators. That will do the hadith not authentic. Because you are attributing something to the Prophet, we are not sure if the Prophet really said or did not say. There's something else. Sometimes we don't have the name of the Sahabi, of the companion here, okay? And the Tabi'i says, the Prophet said. That's hadith called marfu'a, meaning it was raised up to the Prophet without mentioning the name of the companion. So the question is, well, of course, if the name of the Sahabi is not there, why would we accept the hadith? Some scholars of hadith say, no, wait a minute. Yes, we don't have the name, but we know that this tabi'i from that generation did meet with so many Sahabas. Why didn't he mention the name? Oh, wait a minute. We know that in the first 50 years after the death of the Prophet, there were so many political issues in the Muslim community between the caliphs and some Sahaba and some Tabi'een. There were issues of murdering and suicide, and not suicide, murdering and killing between caliphs and between political leaders, and a big mess in the Muslim world there. So yes, it is possible that the Tabi'i heard from the Sahabi, but he was afraid if he mentioned his name, they will come after him. So he said, I'd rather say the Prophet said, without mentioning the name of the Sahaba. So ulama said, discussed, well, that hadith is sahih, but we should not call it sahih, authentic. We should call it marfu'a, raised up to the Prophet, meaning most likely this person met with this person, but we don't know the exact name. So because of political reasons, we don't know. So what did this do for scholarships of hadith in the last 100 years? So many Muslim scholars came out in the last 100 years saying, wait a minute. If I don't know the name of the Sahabi, the companion, why would I accept that hadith? If you cannot authenticate it, kosher it, sign it, why would I accept it? I'm not going to take that marfu' hadith. And there are hadiths that have been so much authentic, I mean, so much accepted in the tradition of Islam as hadith, but are marfu'. I personally, my methodology has been since I studied this science, if it is marfu', I don't accept it. If I don't have the exact chain 100% sure, I'm not going to take that hadith. Because there is a possibility of it being wrong. And I'm not going to attribute to the Prophet something that he did not say or he did not do, especially if I have to make a ruling out of it. What's halal, what's not haram. If it's going to impact your life, I'm not going to use that hadith. If it is just a hadith about what would happen at the end of time or what God will do in the day of judgment, I have no problem accepting that. Because it does not impact a human life on earth now. But if it will impact my life and your life, and I'm not sure of its authenticity, I'd rather say I'm sorry. Not that I adopted this on my own. Most Muslim scholars would not accept Hadith marfu because of that lack of the presence of that Sahabi. Any questions so far?
But does that give it a little bit more stature than something that was declared unauthentic?
Yes, and we'll talk about this maybe. Just let me mention it here. Yes. Within the levels of hadith are sahih or not sahih, authentic or not sahih, you have sahih, authentic. Then you have sahih لغيره. It is authentic because of a reason other than the chain. For example, according to the chain, this hadith is unauthentic. But because the statement of the Prophet is in line with the Quran, then that will become not exactly 100% sure, but I am willing to accept it because it's not in contradiction with the Quran. Actually, it's in line with the Quran. Or you have two chains. This is unauthentic, but this is authentic chain. The hadith becomes not fully authentic because of another reason. It was raised up to, but not fully to the rank of fully authentic. Does that clarify something? Then you have Hasan, which means good. Then you have Hasan لغيره, it is less than it. And it keeps going from all the way Sahih, Sahih لغيره, Hasan, Hasan لغيره, till it becomes Mawdu', which means fabricated. And there's so many fabricated hadiths. Thanks be to God, I say really thanks be to God, that we do have those in books. So if you come to my basement, I have almost 13,000 books in my basement. I have those books already printed, called Al-La'ali al-Masnu'a fi al-Ahadith al-Mawdu'a by Imam al-Mundhir. It's 3 volumes. There's الخبر اليقين في الأحاديث الموضوعة, 9 volumes. It's this size, fabricated hadiths. So thank God, and thanks to those scholars who have really put the effort for so many years to study this stuff, piece by piece, word by word, year by year, day by day. I say this is really amazing discipline that they have put into this discipline. It makes me really proud of these people. The problem is not that we don't have it sorted out. The problem is that Muslims don't know what is or is not sorted out. And people who take one from here, one from here, one from here, don't say where these hadiths come from. And people end up confused. But for the specialist, it's there. It's not that big deal. And now with the internet, the presence, I mean, it's online. And tell you this is fabricated, this is weak, this is under weak, this is between weak and authentic. It's there. Any other question? Yes, yes, right.
I have read that 2/3 of the doctorates granted by Saudi universities are in Islamic studies. Now, how does that scholarship compare with what you're presenting?
It would not be different.
Yeah.
It really wouldn't be different. They would study this discipline is a universal discipline. It's studied by any scholar of Islamic studies who is concerned with this field. And it would not be different. Yes.
And it would not be influenced by the fact that Wahhabism is, if you will, the official ideology in Saudi Arabia. Compared to, say, in another Muslim country, in a place like, say, Al-Azhar.
Not the discipline we are talking about. The influence will end up different. the influence will end up saying, are we going to be literalists or analytical? So, the example I mentioned about what is beyond the ankle. If you take the literalist interpretation, then there's no room to argue about no, the Prophet meant we have to be humble. So that would be the problem, not in this specific sense. Am I answering your question?
Yes.
Yes. So the study of Isnad is the study of the chain, please come in. The study of the matn is the study of the hadith itself, meaning the statement itself. So the chain is who said what about whom, from whom, and where they met. Matn is the study of the statement itself. What could do the hadith to be unauthentic is two things. Either the chain is not complete, or not authentic, or not completely connected, or the matn, the actual sentence itself, is not reliable. Well, if you look down there, it says, making informed decisions about hadith in terms of reliability, authenticity, and form. So the hadith may be authentic, meaning the Prophet did say it, but is it reliable in terms of making rulings out of it or not? Not everything the Prophet said is meant to give us rulings. If you go to number development science, where is it? 13. To number 13. A classification of hadiths. You have hadith ahkam and hadith maghazi. A hadith ahkam meaning specific statements that the Prophet made with the goal of giving you moral directions. Vis-a-vis statements he made to describe things that will happen. I'll give you an example. In one of the hadiths that is doomed to be authentic, the Prophet said the day will come and the Bedouins of my ummah, of my community, will build high-rise buildings. What is he saying here? Is he giving us ahkam, a ruling, saying, oh, don't do that? Or, yeah, go ahead and do it. Or is he just describing what will happen at the end of time? Some people who are literalists and don't understand what the Prophet is really trying to say, they say, you see, the Prophet means we should not build high-rise buildings. It's haram, it's prohibited, it's unlawful. So it becomes how you understand the text, the matn of the Prophet, peace be with him. For example, there's a hadith where the Prophet says, at the end of time, the number of musical instruments will increase. It's exactly how he put it. يَكْثُرُ عَلَى النَّاسِ. The number of a musical instrument will increase. He's not saying it's haram. He's describing what will happen. Some people understood that sentence to mean that these musical instruments are absolutely prohibited in Islam. When you go back to this discipline of ahadith ahkam, ahadith maghazi, ahadith wasfiyya, no, the Prophet is not trying to tell you what's halal, what's haram. He's only trying to describe something that will happen at the end of time. And there's so many of those types of hadiths that are authentic by matn, by the body of the statement, and by isnad. However, people do not distinguish between whether those hadiths are meant to be for ahkam, for rulings, or for just wasf, descriptive. And because you don't know, you end up making the wrong judgment. So I said to those Muslims who say music is haram, using that hadith, you cannot use it. The Prophet is not making any statement in any way, shape, or form within that sentence to say musical instruments are haram. If he would have wanted that sentence to mean music is haram, he would have said, يستحلون, make halal. A completely different sentence. يكثر vis-a-vis يستحل. One means it will just be too many. I call that one of the prophecies of the Prophet. He did prophesy that we will have high-rise buildings in Arabia, and now we do, higher than our New York buildings in Washington, D.C. And he prophesied that the number of musical instruments will increase. You see where I'm coming from? But that becomes a problem for Muslims who cannot distinguish between what is descriptive and what is for the sake of giving you rulings. So let's go back to where we were in Mustalah al-Hadith. So this is where liability and authenticity comes in from. Is it reliable? Is it not reliable? And if it is reliable, is it reliable for all cases or for specific cases? So is a specific statement of the Prophet meant to be for